愿大家平安。
Peace to everyone.
今天早上的题目是从岁首到年终。
Our topic this morning is from the beginning to the end of the year.
我们知道今天是农历的新年大年初一。
We know that today is the first year of the new year for the
我
Chinese.
们知道人类啊，它的历法有两种。
There are two kinds of laws in this world.
历法就是日历的历
There are
，calendar。
two kinds of calendars in this world.
第一种以太阳的周期为标准
One is based on the sun, the
，solar
orbit,
calendar。
based on the sun, which is a solar calendar.
就好像我们西方人，我们在这边西方用公元的啊，从1月到12月的这种西历。
Just like in the Western world, from January to December, we use the Western calendar.
用太阳的周期为计算的方法。
Based on the orbitation of the sun going around the Earth going around the sun.
另外一种历法就是以月亮的周期为计算。
Another type of calendar is based on the moon.
啊，叫做阴历或者是叫做农历。
It's called the Lunar Calendar.
啊，阳历是罗马时代罗马人发明的，
The solar calendar is invented by the Romans.
但是阴历呢，或者农历呢，在我们中国古代就已经有了。
For the lunar calendar, it has gone on for thousands of years.
啊，那中国人或者是很多亚洲的地方都比较看重所谓的农历的新年。
And for many Chinese and also many Asians, they tend to place more emphasis on the Chinese New Year or the Lunar New Year.
啊，变成一种文化，变成一种生活的很看重的一个节日。
It has become it's deeply rooted in their culture, and they have placed much emphasis on this as a festival.
那如果我们只是把它看成一种日历上面的1月1号啊，一种感恩的心，那去很开心的啊跟亲人在一起，那这个是没有什么不好。
And if we see this only as the beginning of a new year, like January 1st, and we are very thankful to God for this, there's nothing wrong with it.
啊，像我们在中国啊、台湾的教会啊，通常农历大年初一都是休假，然后教会都有特别的感恩的聚会。
In China and also in Taiwan, on the first day of the Lunar New Year, it's usually a public holiday, and therefore a lot of members would come to church to give thanks to God.
啊，大家来到教会以敬拜神作为一年的开始。
And everyone comes to church to worship God as the beginning of a new year.
啊，那这样是很好。
That is good.
那我们在国外，因为农历大年初一也不一定有放假，所以我们的新年感恩聚会都在西历的1月1号。
And for those of us who are in the Western world, because we don't have holidays on the Lunar New Year, first day of the Lunar New Year, therefore, we usually celebrate our New Year on January the 1st.
那今天刚好就是碰到安息生日，而我们在这边，
Today happens to be the Sabbath day, and we are gathered here.
啊也是很开心。
We're all very happy.
啊，那但是如果我们有一些人把农历新年看得太重，或者是说啊，你做某某的这个动作，或者是某某的事情，就会带来好运，那这种心态就不对了。
However, if you think that because this is the beginning of a new year and you have to practice some old traditions, and that is not very good.
啊，因为有一些人啊，他从这个文化里面呢，会很看重
There are some people who place much emphasis on this day culturally.
新年一定要做什么，
On the New Year, on the New Year's Day, what must you do?
或者是新年一定不能做什么，
Or on the New Year's Day, what you mustn't do?
或者是年初几一定要做什么，
Or on certain days, what must you do?
或者是不能讲某一句话，
Or the certain words you can't say?
这个其实就是跟迷信有关系。
All these have to do with superstition.
其实蛮多这个中国新年的习俗啊，跟迷信是有点关系。
Actually, a lot of these traditional Chinese customs with New Year's Day are based on superstition.
啊，譬如说打扫，为什么过年之前一定要打扫？
For example, cleaning. Why do we have to clean the house before the New Year?
其实每天都要打扫，每个礼拜都要打扫。
In fact, you have to clean your house every day or every week.
但是古代的人相信过年之前打扫会把那些霉运、不好的东西扫走。
But the people of the ancient days believed that if you would clean your house properly before New Year's, then you're able to sweep away all the bad luck.
那如果你有这种心态，你就不对了。
If that is the attitude that you have, this is wrong.
或者是一定要做什么吃某一些东西才有好运
Or you have to eat certain food to bring good luck.
啊，那这个就不对了。
That is wrong.
因为我们的一生的安排是在神的手中，
Because our life is in the hands of God.
不是在你吃什么或者是什么颜色。
It doesn't depend on what color of clothes you wear or what food you eat.
啊，有一些世界人没有信神的人，他们会写一些春联啊，写一些什么出入平安啊，一些贴在家里的门口啊。
Non-believers would place some kind of auspicious phrases and post them on their doors.
他们觉
to
得
bring good
说
luck.
觉得说写了贴在那边就会带来好运了。
They believe that by posting these auspicious wordings or phrases, it will bring them good luck.
那我们基督徒也不做这样的事。
We Christians, we don't do this.
我们是神看过我们的家
God looks after our household.
啊。如果我们要写，我们就写经节贴在那边。
If you have to write something, write down Bible verses.
其实也不用写了，经节应该在心中了。
In fact, you don't need to write down Bible verses at all because you have to remember them in your hearts.
所以其实过年呢，蛮多。如果按照亚洲的过年方法，蛮多是跟有迷信有一点关系。
In fact, if you were to take a closer look at some of the customs and traditions in Asia, a lot of them are based on superstition.
所以说放鞭炮，
For example, lighting firecrackers.
为什么要有这个放鞭炮的风俗？
Why do we need to light the firecrackers?
他们说放那些鞭炮很大声啊，把那些污秽的灵啊、不好的东西啊赶走。
Because firecrackers create a loud noise, and the noises will chase away all the bad spirits, all the bad
那
lucks.
这个也是跟迷信有点关系。
Again, this is based on superstition.
所以感谢主，我们在国外啊，什么都没有啊，
And we are thankful.
连放假都没有。
We're thankful that in the Western Hemisphere, we have none of these.
我觉得很好，在这边不过年了，省很多事。
And I feel that this is a good thing, not having to celebrate Chinese New Year in the Western Hemisphere saves a lot of trouble.
不然的话，还要每一个人重新买衣服，要打扫，要去很多家里，哇，你去我家，我去你家，弄来弄去很麻烦。
Otherwise, we have to buy new clothes, we have to visit family members or friends. You come to my house, I go to your house, very troublesome.
我们在主里面天天过年，天天都是恩典。
In fact, in the Lord, we are celebrating New Year every day.
我们不是靠人的一些风俗，也不是靠好运，
We celebrate New Year not because it's a human tradition or to bring us good luck.
我们是靠神的恩典过每一天。
Rather, we are relying on God's mercy to help us live through each day.
当然了，在一个历法当中的第一天啊，也是一个好的开始。
And of course, the first day of a calendar year is a good thing.
有一句话说，这个好的开始就是成功的一半。
Some people say that a good beginning gives you 50% of success.
所以我们还算是一年的开头。
So we are still considered the beginning of a new year.
所以今天小弟就按照圣经来讲，从岁首到年终啊，我们要做的事情。
So today, my sermon is based on the topic from the beginning to the end of the year as a
Okay.
mutual encouragement.
申命记第11章
Let's turn to Deuteronomy,
11节。
chapter 11, verse 11.
申命记11章11节。
Deuteronomy chapter 11, verse 11.
申命记11章11到12节。
Deuteronomy chapter 11, verse 11, verse 12. 11. But the land which you are going over to possess is a land of hills and valleys, which drinks water by the rain from heaven. 12. To a land which the Lord your God cares for. The eyes of the Lord your God are always upon it, from the beginning of the year to the end of the year.
这里以色列百姓快要进到迦南地，
Here, the people of Israel are about to enter into the land of Canaan.
他们还没有去过那个地方，
They have not even been to that place yet.
他们也不知道前面的路要怎么样走。
And they don't know how troublesome the journey would be ahead of them.
我们人对未来都有一些憧憬，都有一些希望，
We all have hope regarding our own future.
但是对未来又有一些恐惧，
Yet at the same time, we also fear the future
因为不知道会发生什么事。
because we don't know what will happen.
但是神告诉以色列人，
But here, God told the people of Israel,
你们要过去那个地方非常美好，
you are going over to a place where it's wonderful.
有山有谷，有雨水的滋润
There are hills and valleys and there are waters by rain.
这个是环境。
This is the environment.
我们知道这个地上的以色列地虽然地方不是很大，但是什么环境都有。
We know that the land of Israel, even though it's not big by mass, but it has everything.
它出产的农产品到现在为止也是世界有名的。
And the produce that comes from the land, it's very famous worldwide.
但是环境很好，不是最重要的
A good environment is not the most important.
最重要的是什么呢？
What is the most important?
是从岁首到年终都有神的看顾。
That is, God cares for you from the beginning of the year to the end of the year.
这个世界好的地方有很多，
There are a lot of wonderful places on earth.
但是从年头到年终有神的眼目看顾的，就只有迦南这个应许之地了。
But from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, the only place where God looks after is the promised land.
因为他们是神的选民，
Because they are the chosen ones of God.
神就有责任要从岁首到年终要看顾他。
And that is why God has the responsibility to look after them from the beginning to the end of the year.
就好像你生了孩子，
Just like after giving birth to a child,
你不能说我只礼拜一到礼拜五喂你奶而已啊，我礼拜六、礼拜天我休息，你自己小 baby 自己煮泡面啊。
you can't tell your baby that I will only feed you from Monday to Friday. On the weekends, you're on your own. You can cook your own instant noodles.
你当了父母，你365天都是父母，
When you become a parent, you are a parent for 365 days a year.
全年无休
There is no vacation for you
啊，因为他是你的孩子，
because that is your baby.
所以神已经答应了，
So God has promised
从一年的开始的第一天到一年的最后一天，神都要看顾你。
from the first day of the year to the last of the year, God will take care of you.
但是人跟神的关系是两面的，
But our relationship with God is two ways.
那神从岁首到年终要看顾你，
If God were to take care of you from the first day to the end of the year,
但是你作为神的儿女，
but as children of God,
在岁首到年终你要有什么的责任，
what responsibilities do you have from the first day to the last day of the year?
才可以得到神那么好的看顾呢？
And only then God will look after you.
啊，我就提出几点跟大家分享。
I will raise a few points to share with you.
第一点，
First,
我们要从岁首到年终，一切所做的事都要交托在主的手中。
from the beginning to the end of the year, we have to hand over to God everything
不
that
能
happened to us.
不能自己做主，不能自己凭自己的想法做事。
We cannot make our own decisions. We cannot do things based on our own wits.
我们看诗篇37篇，
Let's turn to Psalms 37.
诗篇37篇
Psalms 37,
第5节，
verse 5.
诗篇的37篇的第5节，
Psalms 37, stanza 5.
第5节，当将你的事交托耶和华，并依靠他，他就必成全。
Commit your way to the Lord, trust in Him, and He will act.
这句话非常的重要，
This is very important.
告诉我们一个有信神的人，有神作为他依靠的人，跟外邦人有什么不一样？
It differentiates us from the Gentiles, us meaning those who have God.
没有信神的人，就是说只能够靠自己
Those without God can only rely on themselves.
啊！我做一年的计划，我要去哪里去做什么？
I have an annual plan, what I'm going to do, where I'm going to go.
但是神的儿女不可以只有自己想自己的，
But as children of God, you cannot only think about yourself.
你任何的事情要问一下天上的爸爸，可不可以？
Everything that you do, you have to ask God in heaven whether it's allowable.
就好像孩子，
For example, your children.
父母给他看过的很好，
And parents take good care of them.
但是孩子不能说哦，我有我的计划，我不跟父母商量。
But children can't say that I have my plans, I won't discuss them with my
你
parents.
什么事情跟父母先商量，
Whatever things you have to first discuss with your parents,
父母一定会跟你考虑周全，给你意见，
and your parents will think about it, consider them, and give you some comments.
甚至把你看不到的会提醒你。
Or even would bring up some ideas that you have not even thought of.
好，我说你有困难了，你没有办法完成那么复杂的事情，
If you face difficulties and not be able to complete a complex
或
thing,
是你力量不够，你钱不够，
or that you have limited resources,
哦，你跟父母好好商量，父母也同意了，哦，他支持你。
and discuss with your parents that they may be able to help you.
所以这里说我们跟神的关系也一样，
So here, our relationship with God is the same
我
way.
们不要自己做主。
Do not act on our own behalf.
所谓的交托，就是要先来求问神，
What it means by commit your way to the Lord, it means to ask Him
我
first.
可以这样吗？
Can I do this?
新的一年开始了，我有一些计划
That this is the beginning of a new year, I have some plans.
啊，神啊，我未来的路这样走可以吗？
God, can I do this or can I walk on this path in my future?
我想这样做，合乎你的心意吗？
I want to do this. Is this all right with you?
我想换这个工作，是你愿意吗？
I want to change a new job. Are you willing?
我要读这方面的学问，是你会带领我吗？
I want to study this topic. Can you lead me?
凡做一个重要的决定，都要好好的祷告，
Every important decision that you make, you have to pray first.
尤其是在一年的开头，我们一定很多的计划。
And especially at the beginning of a new year, you must have a lot of
我
plans.
们不要想说，我想怎么样，人生在我的手中。
Do not think that this is your life, you can do whatever you want.
我们一定要交托给神。
We have to hand over everything to God.
什么叫做交托？
What does it mean by handing over?
我们看新约的雅各书
Let's turn to James in the New Testament.
第4章
James chapter 4,
13节。
verse 13.
雅各书第4章13节。
James chapter 4, verse 13.
13节。 4章13节。
Come now, you who say today or tomorrow we will go into such and such a town and spend a year there and trade and get gain.
14节。
14. Whereas you do not know about tomorrow, what is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes.
第15节。
15. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we shall live and shall do this or that.
这就是交托了。
That is meant by handing over.
交托就是把你的主权，可不可以做这件事，会不会做得成，交给神。
Handing over means you hand over your sovereignty, that is your right to decide for yourself, over to God.
这里做一个例子，
Here's an example.
有人说了啊，我今天、明天要去哪里做买卖，得利住1年。
Someone says, today, tomorrow, we're going to such a town and spend a year there, trade and get gain.
其实啊，明天如何，不要说明年如何，明天如何你都不知道。
In fact, you don't even know what will happen tomorrow.
明天你在不在，你都不知道。
You don't even know whether you will live tomorrow.
我们人的计划会很远。
We tend to plan far in advance.
我们年底要去哪里？明年要做什么？
That what we're going to do at the end of the year, where we're going to go next year.
这里说生命是什么呢？
It tells us what is life.
是一片云雾。
Your life is like a mist.
我们温哥华很多云雾，
And in Vancouver, we sometimes experience quite a bit of mist.
尤其是你住在北温或者是高桂林Maple Ridge 这些山上的，哇，早上很多雾。
Especially if you live in North Vancouver or Coquitlam or Maple Ridge, where it's at higher elevation. It's quite foggy sometimes in the morning.
但是太阳一出来，雾就不见了。
When the sun comes out, the mist or the fog disappears.
前几个礼拜，那个乌克兰航空的飞机载着100多人，要从伊朗那个起飞。
A few weeks ago, a Ukraine airline was taking off from Iran.
大家都知道这个新闻。
Everyone knows about this news.
载着50几个加拿大人，
There are over 50 Canadians on board.
他们都是休假的时候回去过节过年，回到伊朗。
They're all making use of the holidays to go back to Iran to
有
visit.
有一些是回去结婚的，
Some went back to get married.
有一些是回去看亲人了，
Some went back to visit relatives.
高高兴兴说好了，那我们要回加拿大了。
They were all very happy, and they were returning to Canada.
结果飞机一起飞没几分钟，
And when the plane took off a few minutes later,
就被伊朗的飞弹打下来
the plane was hit by an Iranian missile.
，100多个人在上面，没有一个生还。
Over 100 souls were on board, none survived.
上面有老人，有壮年，也有小孩，
There were seniors, there were middle-aged, there were children on board.
他们都是跟你跟我一样，都是高高兴兴回国，想要高高兴兴回来。
They were all like you and I. They returned back to their homeland happily, and they want to return back to Canada.
结果永远回不来。
But in fact, they could never return to Canada.
他们上飞机之前有想到这个事会发生吗？
Have they thought about their plane being shot down when they board the plane?
他们离开加拿大之前有想到以后回不来吗？
When they left Canada, have they ever thought that they would never return?
他绝对不会这样想的。
They would never have, this thought would have never occurred to them.
大家都会想，我以后还有很多的日子，很多的前途，
Many people thought that there's still a long future ahead of me.
我明天还是属于我的。
Tomorrow still belongs to me.
其实明天不是属于我们的，
In fact, tomorrow does not belong to you.
除非神愿意，我们还有明天。
Unless God is willing, you will still have a tomorrow.
如果你明天没有了，那你今天有的钱也没有用。
If you don't have a tomorrow, then what is going to happen to the money that you have today?
你明天没有了，你今天学问再大也没有用。
If you don't have a tomorrow, then no matter how much education you have received, it's all vain.
那谁决定你的明天可不可以继续存呢？
And who
存留呢？
decides whether you will live till tomorrow?
圣经说不是你啊，
The Bible says it's not you,
是主啊。
it is God.
所以第15节就是所谓的交托。
So verse 15 is where we hand over everything to God.
你可以有你的计划，
Yes, you can plan.
你可以有你的安排。
Yes, you can arrange for things to
那
happen.
最重要，我们还是要问神，神啊，你愿不愿意这件事情？
The most important of all is that we have to ask God whether He is willing.
说主啊，如若愿意，我们才可以活着，才可以做这个事，做那个事。
If the Lord wills, we shall live, we shall do this or that.
但是有时候我们生活当中呢，忘记主权在神。
But sometimes in our busy lives, we forget that the sovereignty is in God's
我
hand.
们常常是16节，
We are often, verse number 16,
现今的人，没有信神的人，心中就是尽以张狂夸口
that as it is, you boast in your arrogance.
觉得说哇，生命在我手中，
You tend to think that your life is in your hands,
前路由我安排。
that your future is based on your will.
这样就想都错了。
If you think this way, you're wrong.
所以为什么我们要一年的开始要来到神的面前？
And that is the very reason why we come to church on the first day of a new year.
因为未来一年会遇到什么事，我们的生命怎么样，我们不知道。
Because we don't know what will happen to us in the coming year.
我们只能够把一切交在主的手中。
We can only hand over everything over to God.
工作的方向也一样，
Same thing with the direction of our vocation,
家庭的方向也是一样。
or where our family is heading
我
towards.
们看一个例子，
Let's take a look at an example.
以斯拉记，旧约的以斯拉记
Book of Ezra,
第7章，
chapter 7.
以斯拉记第7章第9节，
Ezra chapter 7, verse 9.
以斯拉记7章的第9节。
Ezra chapter 7, verse 9.
正月初1日，他从巴比伦启程，因为神施恩的手帮助他。5月初1就到了耶路撒冷。
For on the first day of the first month, he began to go up from Babylonia, and on the first day of the fifth month, he came to Jerusalem, for the good hands of his God was upon him.
这里是记载有一个人叫做以斯拉，
Here is a man by the name of Ezra.
他是个文士，
He was a scribe.
文士就是教导圣经的人。
That is, a scribe is someone who teaches the Bible or
他
the
听
scriptures.
他听说这个耶路撒冷啊，已经重建了圣殿了
And he heard that Jerusalem had been rebuilt.
啊，就好像我们今天买了会堂了，
Or rather, the holy temple in Jerusalem had been rebuilt. Like unto us today, we bought a new
但
chapel.
是会堂是建筑物啊，
But the chapel itself is just a structure, a building structure.
会堂建立容易，信仰建立是困难。
It is easy to put up a physical building, but it's hard to build up faith.
对他想说，他立志，我应该要回去耶路撒冷，在那边来教导大家神的话语。
So he made a decision that he has to go back to Jerusalem to teach the people the words of God.
从哪里回去呢？
And where was he to begin his
就
journey?
是从当时他住的外国，就是波斯国回去。
That is, he lived in Persia in those days, and he's to return to Jerusalem from Persia.
哇，就好像这个就是今天的伊朗啊、伊拉克那一边地方。
And Persia is in today's Iran or Iraq.
好，那他想要开始要回去了，
So he thought about going back.
什么时候开始这个旅程？
When did he start his journey?
这第9节说了，正月初1。
Verse 9 tells us the first day of the first month.
哇，为什么他选那一天呢？
Why did he choose that particular day?
可能他觉得说，我要做重要的事情，1月1号开始有这个重要的里程碑在里面。
And perhaps he thought to himself that I am going to do something important, so the first day of the first month will be a good day to start.
他的方向定在耶路撒冷，
His direction was towards Jerusalem
他的方向定对了，神就与他同在。
because he had set his direction correctly. God was with him.
5月1号就到了，
And he arrived on the first day of the fifth month.
整整走了4个月，
So he walked for 4 full months.
中间经过很多不同的地方，
And in between, he passed a lot of places.
也许也遇到很多的困难，
Perhaps he has faced some difficulties.
甚至会也遇到危险
And perhaps he even faced perils.
啊。当时很多强盗啊，
Many robbers,
也有野兽啊，
wild beasts.
他们不是坐飞机啊，一下就到了，
He didn't fly over to
他
Jerusalem.
走4个月的路，
He walked 4 months.
但是神与他同在。
But God was with him
1月1号开始，
from the first day of the first month
5月1号到。
to the first day of the fifth month.
这里告诉我们什么呢？
What does it tell us?
从岁首到年终，一切交托在神的手中啊。
From the beginning to the end of the year, you have to place everything in God's
但
hands.
是你的方向要对。
At the same time, your direction must be correct.
如果你的方向不是神的方向，
If your direction is not heading towards God,
你不是在做神要你做的事，
you're not doing what God wanted you to do.
你一直祷告，一直交托也没有用。
You keep praying and handing over to God, that's pointless.
今天很多人很迫切的祷告，要求神完成他自己想要做的事。
Today, a lot of people pray fervently and pray very hard to ask God to grant them what they want.
神啊，我要什么？就好像一个孩子要父母给他一切所要的。
And just like unto a child who wanted his parents to give him everything he wants.
神啊，我一定要你给我，你帮助我。
God, I wanted this, you have to help me.
我需要赚钱，你一定要帮我赚大
I
钱。
have to make a lot of money, you have to help me.
神啊，我生意一定要好。
My business must be good.
神啊，我孩子一定要读书很聪明。
And my children must be intelligent and good in their studies.
世界上的东西求很多，
There are a lot of things you can ask for in the world.
但是我们心中有没有把目标定在耶路撒冷？
But have we placed our direction, our goal in Jerusalem?
我自己的信仰有没有往神的家来出发？
My own faith, is it headed towards the house of God?
有没有进步？
Have I improved in my faith?
只要你跟神的关系建立好，
As long as your relationship with God is good,
其他东西你就交给神了，这个你不用担心
then。everything else is just hand over to God because there's nothing to worry about.
第二点，
Point number 2.
从岁首到年终，
From the beginning to the end of the year,
我们要好好的为主勤劳做圣工。
we have to work diligently for the Lord to do holy work.
我们看出埃及记的第40章
Let's turn to Exodus chapter 40,
第1节，
verse 1.
出埃及记40章第1节
Exodus chapter 40, verse 1.
，40章1到2节。
Chapter 40, verse 1 and verse 2. Verse 1, the Lord said to Moses, 2, on the first day of the first month, you shall erect the tabernacle of the tent of meeting.
这里在正月的初一，神就跟摩西说，
Here, on the first day of the first month, God said to Moses,
你要把帐幕立起来。
you must erect the tabernacle of the tent of
这个
meeting.
帐幕叫做会幕，
This tent of meeting is called the tabernacle.
会幕就是神要与人同在的一个地方。
And this tabernacle is a place where God will meet his people.
在这个之前，他们已经准备了很久了，
And prior to this, they have made a lot of preparations.
神给他们很多的指示，
God has given them a lot of instructions.
会幕要用什么材料，
What materials they must use to make the tent.
鼓励大家奉献。
And encourage everyone to offer.
那要神就给智慧那些工匠，那把那些材料变成会幕。
And God has granted talents to the tradesmen so that they can turn all these resources or materials into a tabernacle.
但是呢，到现在为止呢，东西都是在不同的地方很分散的，不是一个完整的帐幕。
At that time, the tent was in pieces everywhere.
只要没有架起来，这个会幕就没有办法运作，
As long as the tent was not being erected, there is no purpose to it.
就不漂亮，
So it won't be a beautiful tent.
也不能遮风挡雨。
And it can't provide shelter for
会
everyone.
会幕也不那个月柜也不能搬进去，
And the Ark of the Covenant cannot be put into this tent.
像我们今天去露营一样啊，
Liken to us going camping today,
你整个车子都是那些露营要用的东西
you have a car full of the things that you would need for your trip.
也有一个帐幕，
You have a tent,
那也要把它搭起来啊。
but you have to erect the tent.
你不搭起来，你其他东西你放哪里？
If you don't erect the tent, where are you going to put all your stuff?
晚上睡哪里？
Where are you going to sleep at night?
所以我们去过露营的人知道了，你一到了营地，就是第一件事什么不做，就是先搭那个帐篷。
For those of you who have been to camping before, you know that once you arrived at the campground, the first thing you do is to set up the tent.
好了，现在什么都有了，但是没有架起来啊。
Now that you have everything, you haven't erected the tabernacle or the tent.
神就跟摩西说了
So God said to Moses,
，1月1号，你给我把这个会幕架起来，
on the first day of the first month, you shall erect the tabernacle.
然后呢，把所有里面的东西搬进去。
And then everything that should be placed in it, move them in.
这个教训非常的重要啊。
This is a very important teaching.
神为什么要以色列百姓在旷野？
Why did God wanted his people to wander around in the wilderness?
其实在训练他们，
In fact, he was training them
对神要有信心，
to have faith in God,
要认识神。
to know God.
透过会幕要跟神建立关系。
Through the tabernacle, they are to establish a relationship with
但
God.
是会幕是怎么得来的呢？
But how did this tabernacle came about?
不是从天掉下来的，
The tabernacle didn't drop from heaven.
是要百姓的手去奉献，去把它造成的。
Rather, the tabernacle was made by the hands of the people.
然后神的约柜就可以搬进去，
And then the ark of God can be placed into the tent.
然后神就可以与他们同在。
And then God can be with them.
所以以色列人在旷野，他们生活的目的是什么？
So what is the purpose of the lives of the people in the wilderness?
他们每天其实生活很单调，
In fact, their life was very boring.
表面上就是起床、捡玛拿、煮玛拿、吃玛拿，又饿了又再吃，然后就睡觉了。
On the surface, you see that all they do is get up, go out and pick the manna, and then make bread, make bread again, eat, and go to sleep.
有时候我们想想我们自己的生活啊，你想想自己去年做了什么，讲得出来吗？
We can think about our own lives. What have we accomplished last year?
顶多就是说我每天上班啊、下班买菜，
Perhaps all you can say is, I go to work every day and then I go grocery shopping.
每天啊，就是围了那几个点，还有学校接送、下课、买菜。
And there's just a
上班。
few points that we go to. That is, we go to work, we go to school, we go grocery shopping.
很单调啊，
It's very boring.
就好像以色列人每天捡玛拿，
It's like unto the people of Israel picking manna every day.
但是他们活着不是为了吃玛拿，
They live not for manna.
他们活着是为了要把会幕盖起来，
They live to erect or to build the tabernacle.
他们活着是为了要跟神建立关系，
They live to establish a relationship with God.
活着是为了要认识神，
To live is because they have to get to know God.
活着是为了侍奉神。
They live because they have to serve
那我们
God.
看第3节以下很有意思，
Let's read verse 3 onwards.
第3节，
Verse 3, and you shall put in it the ark of the testimony, and you shall screen the ark with a veil.
第4节，
4, and you shall bring in the table and set its arrangements in order, and you shall bring in the lampstand and set up its lamps.
再来继续。
5, and you shall put the golden altar for incense before the ark of the testimony, and set up the screen for the door of the tabernacle.
你看啊，这里会幕它那个帐篷加起来了，东西就要搬进去，要到位了。
And once the tabernacle had been erected, the things should be moved in and be placed in the right order.
当然，那个法柜就是约柜要放进去啊，
Of course, the ark must be first placed in it
神就在里面呢。
because God is in there.
约柜就代表神的同在，
The ark represents the presence of God.
没有约柜，会幕就没有意义。
Without the ark, there's no purpose for the tent.
所以会幕要那个约柜要先进去，
So the ark must be placed in first.
但是其他东西也要搬进去，
But the other things must follow.
包括这个金灯台啦、那个金坛啊、那些什么的，全部桌子啊，全部要搬进去。
For example, the tables, the lampstand, the altar of incense, etc.
好了，我们想想这个会幕代表什么？
So what does this tabernacle represent?
会幕就是今天的真教会，
Tabernacle represents the true church today.
神已经进来了，
God is in there.
神的圣灵已经与我们同在了，
The Spirit of God is with us.
真理已经给我们了。
The truth has been granted to us.
但是问题是，其他的人、其他的岗位有没有到位呢？有没有进来呢？
But for the other things that should have been in there, are they there yet?
如果只有约柜没有其他东西，这个约柜就不美了，那个会幕就不美了。
If there's only the ark in the tabernacle, then this tabernacle is not going to be beautiful.
我们看彼得后书第2章，
Let's turn to 2 Peter chapter 2.
彼得后书第2章第5节，
2 Peter chapter 2 verse 5.
彼得后书第2章第5节，
2 Peter chapter 2 verse 5.
对不起，彼得前书啊，
Sorry, it's 1 Peter
彼得前书2章5节，
chapter 2 verse 5.
请读。
5, and like living stones, be yourselves built into a spiritual house, to be a holy priesthood, to offer spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ.
这里彼得长老勉励我们每一个信徒，
So here, Elder Peter encouraged every member.
我们来到主的面前是做什么的？
What do we do when we come before God?
不是坐在那边听道理的。
We are not here just to sit and to listen.
有一些基督徒以为我一个礼拜来一次，坐在这边听一篇道理，我就是个基督徒了。
Some Christians believe that to be a Christian is to simply come to church once a week, to sit down in the pews and to listen to the sermon.
其实不单止这样，
That is only a small part.
我们需要敬拜，
We have to worship.
但是同时也需要侍奉。
At the same time, we must also serve or minister.
要想想神要我做什么，
Think about what does God want me to do?
我能为教会做出什么贡献？
What contributions can I make to the church?
我能把人引到神的面前吗？
Can I bring people towards
就
God?
好像我们被建造一起，
Just like us being built together.
要成为属灵的宫殿，
We have to become a spiritual house.
献上属灵的祭。
We have to offer spiritual
所以
sacrifices.
原来会幕这些每一个物件呢，其实都是预表我们每一个人，
In fact, all the pieces of the tabernacle represents each and every one of us.
我们都是属灵的真教会的一部分。
We are all a part of the spiritual house of God.
2020年，
2020.
神要我在这个家庭贡献什么？
What does God want me to contribute to this house of God?
我们现在教会已经买好会堂了，
We have purchased our chapel.
感谢主啊！经过很辛苦的募款，大家的神的灵感动，大家很用力的奉献，我们终于把不可能的那么短时间之内的筹了那么多钱，把会堂买起来了。
And we thank God that in a short period of time, we have managed to accumulate or gather quite a bit of monies so that we can pay or buy the chapel.
接下来当然就是要装修了，
So the next thing is to renovate.
我们要大家每天为这个事祷告。
We have to pray for this event, for this every day.
装修也不简单，装修也不简单
Renovation is not easy.
但是更考验的挑战更大的就是我们要把那个教会弄得很多人在里面敬拜，很热闹， 然后很多慕道者在那边得到神的恩典。
What is more difficult is for us to bring in the people, bring in a lot of people to fill up the space in that chapel.
那在里面很多人愿意侍奉，
And among these people, there will be a lot of people willing to serve God.
然后在透过侍奉当中，每一个人都体验到神。
And through serving God, they can all experience God.
哇，这个都是要很多人的参与啊，
This requires the efforts of everyone.
很多人的祷告啊，
And it also requires the prayers of
因
everyone.
为在会堂在那边还是空空的，空空的还没准备好嘛，
Because right now, that chapel is empty. Everything is not ready.
所以我们有几个月或者半年的时间准备好我们自己
So we have a few months or half a year to prepare ourselves.
啊。当大家都准备好的时候，
When everything is ready,
神的荣耀就会进来。
the glory of God shall enter in.
所以我们要从岁首到年终立志，怎么样来侍奉神？
From the beginning to the end of the year, we have to be determined how we're going to serve God.
有多少力量，我们就出多少力量
You can only offer your very best,
啊！主就会与我们同在。
and God will be with you.
第三点，
Third point,
从岁首到年终，我们都要非常的警醒预备。
from the beginning to the end of the year, we have to be alert and be prepared.
看回来，《生命记》第11章，
Let's turn back to Deuteronomy chapter 11.
《生命记》第11章，
Deuteronomy chapter 11.
刚刚我们是读11、12节，
Earlier we read verse 11 and verse
就
12.
是从岁首到年终啊，神的眼目都会看顾。
That for the eyes of the Lord are always upon it from the beginning of the year to the end of the year.
通常读这一段呢，读到12节就不读下去了。
Normally, people stop reading, only read up to verse 12.
但是13节以下也是很重要。
But verse 13 and onwards are also important.
13节，
13. And if you will obey my commandments, which I command you this day, to love the Lord your God and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul.
14节，
14. He will give the rain for your land in its season, the early rain and the latter rain, that you may gather in your grain and your wine and your oil.
啊，这里说，如果你听神的话，神祝福你，一切的好的事情会发生。
So if you listen to the words of God, then God will bless you. Every good thing will happen to
因为你
you.
敬拜真神，你只有侍奉神。
Because if you worship the true God, you can only serve him.
好，那秋雨春雨来，五谷新酒不缺，
So
非常好啊。
when the spring rain and the fall rain comes, then you will have your grain, your harvest, and you will have your wine, your grapes.
但
That's
是
good.
危险往往是生活过得最好的时候就出现了。
But danger comes usually at a time where your life is good.
好，我们看第15，继续看第15节。
Let's continue with verse 15. And he will give grass in your fields for your cattle, and you shall eat and be full.
啊，16，
16. Take heed lest your heart be deceived, and you turn aside and serve other gods and worship them.
啊，这里说了，当你吃得很饱的时候啊，这里最危险的时候。
It says here that when you are at your full, it will be the most dangerous
我
time.
们以为以色列百姓在旷野很危险，对不对？
We thought that the people of Israel were in danger when they were wandering in the wilderness.
在旷野其实有神的同在，也不是太危险。
In fact, they have the abidance of God with them in the wilderness, so it's not that dangerous.
他们吃也没有吃太饱，因为每天吃玛拿，这个每天吃一样的，也不会说真的是吃太多。
And they haven't eaten to their fill because all they had were manna.
还有常常有准备，有一个目标，我要去迦南地。
And they had a goal, that is, they're heading towards the land of Canaan.
但是呢，真正的危险呢是进到迦南地之后
The real danger comes when they enter into the land of Canaan.
啊，这里说吃得饱足了。
Here it says that when you eat and are full,
第16节危险来了，
verse 16 says danger comes.
你要谨慎啊，免得心中受迷惑，就偏离正路，去侍奉敬拜别神。
Take heed lest your heart be deceived and you turn aside and serve other gods and worship them.
啊，这个是真正的危险。
This is the true danger.
在旷野的时候，他们知道只有真神是神，
In the wilderness, they know that only God is the true God.
他们生活也是刚刚好，也没有太丰富。
And their life was just sufficient, nothing more.
一件衣服、一双鞋子穿40年，
And one pair of shoes, one set of clothes they can wear for 40 years.
生活很简单。
Simple lives.
但是进去了，生活很好了，
But when they enter into the land of Canaan, their lives have improved.
开始忘记神了。
They begin to forget about God.
我们信仰的堕落啊，往往是生活很舒服之后就开始了。
The fall of our faith usually starts because we have a good life.
有时候想想我们过去啊，生活还不是很美好的时候，
If you think about the past when your life isn't that good,
很艰苦的时候，
when your life was difficult,
哇，那个时候啊常常祷告，
at that time you pray quite often
那时候常常来教会，
and you would come to church frequently.
那时候有什么事大小事情都要求问神，
And no matter what problems you encounter, you will always ask God.
那时候也没有什么特别节目
At that time, there's no special programs.
啊，生活也 过得刚刚好。
Life is just enough.
好了，现在得到神很多的祝福了，
Now that you have been much blessed by God,
生活很忙了，
you're busy,
外面很多的朋友，
you have a lot of friends,
也很多不同的娱乐。
and you have a lot of other entertainment,
那个时候的思想呢开始改变了。
then your thoughts will begin to
哎
change.
呀，神不是那么重要嘛？
And God is not that important.
我们去世界的神影响我们。
The gods of the world start to influence
我
us.
们今天不会去拜偶像，
Today we won't worship idols,
但是也许心中有很多不同的别的偶像，
but perhaps there are other kinds of idols that we worship in our hearts.
把我们的心抓走了。
They have captured our
我
hearts.
们看提摩太后书，
Let's turn to 2 Timothy.
提摩太后书第3章
2 Timothy chapter 3.
这里说为什么我们要警醒啊？
It tells us why we have to be alert.
第3章第1节，
Chapter 3 verse 1.
你该知道末世必有危险的日子来到。
But understand this, that in the last days there will come times of stress.
你看啊，进到迦南地之后，在末世主耶稣来之前，我们今天就是危险的日子。
And remember, the people enter into the land of Canaan, and today here we are in the last days. Danger
你
comes.
说有很危险吗？传道我们在温哥华很安全啊，
You may ask, are we really in danger, preacher? We are in Vancouver. It's very safe
我
here.
们肉体很安全，
Physically, we are safe.
至少现在还是嘛啊。
Well, at least for now, we are.
至少武汉肺炎还没有来到温哥华嘛。
At least Vancouver has not, we haven't had a case of coronavirus here in Vancouver.
如果你隔壁那个也武汉肺炎，对面那个也武汉肺炎，你就觉得你很危险。
And if you feel that you have neighbors from the city of Wuhan, then you will probably feel a little bit dangerous.
至少你现在肉体还是很安全
But at least now, physically, you're safe.
这里也没有打仗，也没有飞弹会把你的飞机打下来。
We don't have wars here, so no missile is going to hit you.
但是呢，属灵上很危险。
But spiritually, we are in danger.
怎么危险？
Why are we in danger?
第2节，
Verse 2.
因为那时候人要专顾自己。
For men will be lovers of self.
你看现在的人是不是什么都不爱，只爱自己？
And look around you, or rather, take a look around the world. Men today are very selfish.
老一辈可能还好一点，现在的孩子很自私，
The older generations are better, but the younger generation, children today, they're very selfish.
大人也自私，
Even the adults are selfish.
只爱自己。
They only love themselves.
然后呢，贪爱钱财，
And they are lovers of money.
什么都不爱，只爱钱。
They love nothing but money,
尤其是中国人
especially Chinese.
中国人新年一定要讲什么？
For Chinese, in the new year, what do we say?
看到人就是恭喜发财，
Well, we greet each other with prosperity.
什么都不管了，就要发财最重要。
We don't care about anything as long as we're prosperous.
发财真的那么重要吗？
Is it really that important for us to be prosperous?
但是大家都想要发财，
But everyone wants to be rich.
最好什么都不做，就是钱就最多。
The best thing is we do nothing and we have lots of
这
money.
个害到连老外啊，连西人啊，都空黑发财，都写出来，英文都要学这个。
And even the Westerners now understand the phrase to be
我们
prosperous.
基督徒啊，新年最好不要跟随别人说恭喜发财。
As we Christians, we should not follow the tradition to greet others with prosperity.
新年快乐是可以，
We can greet them with Happy New Year.
身体健康也很重要。
We can greet them with good health.
最好你可以有平安喜乐啊，
And it's best if they have peace and joy.
不要老是想发财。
Do not keep thinking about being
但是
prosperous.
现在人呢，整天都是想发财
But today, everyone wants to be prosperous.
再来呢，很危险的，
Next danger.
自夸
Proud.
现在人是不是很骄傲？
Are people proud today?
狂傲、
Arrogant.
放毒。
Abusive.
这个都是因为想要发财、很自我中心所发出来的一些表现。
It's because they are lovers of money and they are lovers of self, and therefore this is how they portray themselves.
什么都不爱，只爱钱，
They love nothing but money.
谁都不理，只顾自己。
They don't care about anyone else but themselves.
接下来呢，就是违背父母呢，
Next is disobedient to their parents.
这个很可怕。
This is terrifying.
现在的父母很爱儿女，
Today's parents love their children,
但是现在的孩子呢很有个性，
but today's children are quite a character.
从小就不理父母的很多，或者是违背父母的。
There are a lot of young children who ignore their parents.
以前从小的还会说要听父母，现在的是父母听孩子。
And when I was young, we used to say that children have to listen to their parents, but today it's parents who listen to the children.
再来呢，忘恩负义。
And then there are haters of, rather ungrateful.
现在的人呢不会感恩的，
Today, people are not being grateful.
你欠我的，你要给我多一点。
If you owe me, then you have to return me with more.
既然忘记恩典，作为负义了，就不会按照义来行。
And if you have already forgotten other people's grace, then you're going to be
还
ungrateful
有呢，
towards them.
心不圣洁，
And then they are unholy,
无亲情，
inhumane,
不己愿，
implacable,
好说谗言，
slanderers,
不能制约，
profligates,
性情凶暴，不爱良善。
fierce and haters of good,
哇，外主卖友，任意妄为，自高自大，爱厌乐，不爱神啊。
treacherous, reckless, swollen with conceit, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God.
基本上你看电影啊、电视啊，那些人心的斗争啊，那些不好的事、都出现在现实的生活里，跟我的周围。
In fact, if you watch TV shows or watch movies, all of the negative things that are being portrayed in there are actually quite real because you can see them in real life.
所以你说是不是很危险？
So tell me, is the world not a dangerous place?
如果我们不谨慎，
If we are not
我
careful,
们的心思意念都被世界影响，
then our thoughts and our hearts will be influenced by the world.
以为这样是正常的，我也要保护自己，我也要跟他们一
We
样。
may think that this is normal. We have to protect ourselves. We have to be like everyone.
当我们跟神的关系出了问题，
But when there's a problem with our relationship with
我
God,
们的心就会改变，
then our hearts change.
就会变成这样。
We will be like this.
所以啊，摩西才透过《申命记》11章告诉百姓，
That is why Moses, through Deuteronomy chapter 11, told the people,
从岁首到年终，神会看顾你，
from the beginning to the end of the year, God will take care of you.
但是你自己也要很小心啊。
But you have to be careful.
你不小心的话，
If you're not careful,
被引诱离开了真道，
then you will be deceived and will depart from the truth.
最后就会灭亡。
At the very end, you shall head towards destruction.
在神的祝福恩典之下灭亡，
That you will be destroyed under the blessings of God.
怎么这个很可怜啊！
And this is rather pitiful.
所以从岁首到年终，
Therefore, from the beginning to the end of the
第
year,
一点，一切都要交在神的手中，
first hand over everything to
不
God.
要靠自己。
Do not rely on yourselves.
第二点，
Two,
从岁首到年终要好好的侍奉神，
from the beginning to the end of the year, serve the Lord well.
这是第三点，
Third,
最重要的还是要警醒，预备主再来。
most important of all is to be alert and prepare for the coming of
主
God.
耶稣来的日子又近了一年了，
And the coming of the Lord Jesus is now 1 year closer.
我自己的生命又少了1岁了，
And my life is now shortened by 1 year.
要离开见主又近了一年了。
And I am 1 year closer to seeing
我
God.
们准备好了吗？
Are you prepared?
我们来唱诗。
Let us